Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. When mechanic Marco steps away from his garage for just 15 minutes, he returns to find everything gone. Tools, equipment, his entire livelihood. The culprits? A rogue HOA he never joined. What follows is a battle for justice that shakes the whole neighborhood. I've always thought of my garage as an extension of myself. It's where I built my first custom V8 engine from junkyard scrap, where I bled on a carburetor that didn't want to come apart, and where I spent more hours than I cared to admit polishing tools I already cleaned. It wasn't just a workspace. It was my temple. That morning, it was open, sun streaming in, compressor humming softly, and the smell of gasoline and old metal in the air. Perfect Saturday. I had just finished welding a bracket on a customer's Dodge when Dave, my neighbor across the street, hollered from his porch. "Marco, got that Guatemalan roast I told you about. Come try it before the bastards pave over all the flavor." I chuckled. Dave's the only other guy on this street who doesn't bow to the Oakwood Heights HOA. We both live on the fringe, geographically and ideologically. Our homes sit right on the line, like two stubborn teeth jutting out from a row of plastic veneers. HOA doesn't technically own us, but they sure love pretending they do. I wiped the sweat off my brow, glanced back at the garage. Wide open, everything neatly arranged, same way it had been for years, and thought, what the hell, 15 minutes won't kill me. Walking over, I took a last look at my baby, my toolbox, my snap-on gear, the wall-mounted racks with my labeled bins. Everything had a place. I'd worked hard to get here, paid for this land in full. I didn't owe anyone anything. Especially not Oakwood Heights. We sat on Dave's porch, sipping that earthy, acidic roast, watching squirrels commit petty theft from his bird feeder. Talk turned to carb rebuild kits and how the Cardinals are probably going to blow another lead this season. Just regular small-town neighbor stuff. 15 minutes. Tops. When I crossed the street back to my place, I felt the shift in the air before I even hit the driveway. The garage door was still open, but it was quiet. Too quiet. No humming from the compressor, no familiar glint of metal catching the light. Just emptiness. My feet froze on the driveway. The world narrowed like I was looking through a damn tunnel. Inside the garage, every shelf was stripped bare. My snap-on set, gone. The big compressor I'd had since before my divorce, gone. My welder, my spare parts bins, even the little stool I sit on when I'm too tired to stand, gone. The floor was littered with dust outlines of where things used to be. One of the pegboards was hanging loose, like it had been ripped in a hurry. There were muddy footprints across the concrete. One of them stepped right on an old oil stain I'd never managed to scrub out. I always thought it looked like a bear with a top hat. Now it had a tire track over its face. I staggered back out, numb, blinking like it was some bad dream. That's when I saw it. A white box truck pulling away slowly from the end of my street. On the side, printed in faux gold script, it read, Oakwood Heights, Neighborhood Enforcement Unit. For a second, my brain couldn't process it. Like, surely I was wrong. A coincidence. Some delivery van. Then I saw it. Hanging from the back gate, one of my red tool straps flapping in the breeze like a goddamn trophy. I sprinted after the truck barefoot like a lunatic, yelling, but it was already turning the corner. When I got back to the garage, I just stood there, gripping the frame of the door like it might fall without me. My knuckles were white. My breath was ragged. Rage was building, was slow and volcanic, but right then, it was eclipsed by disbelief. Who the hell does that? My mind raced. A neighbor? A prank? A break-in? No. That truck. That was them. That HOA I never signed anything with. That smug little cabal of property value cultists led by that tight-lipped banshee, Karen Finch. No way. No. Not possible. I pulled out my phone and dialed the HOA number. I knew it by heart because they'd been sending me junk mail for years. Useless warnings about non-conforming structures, barking about my pickup truck like it was a damn menace to society. The line rang once, twice. Then someone answered, a voice like cold chicken salad. "This is Karen Finch, president of Oakwood Heights Homeowners Association. How may I help you?" I clenched my jaw. "Karen, it's Marco Santiago. Did your people just take the contents of my garage?" A beat. Then, calmly, too calmly. "Yes, Mr. Santiago, that was a standard enforcement action. You've been in violation for over 2 years. We confiscated property in lieu of unpaid fines." I almost dropped the phone. "You what?" You've refused to pay for ongoing violations, including unauthorized commercial activity, improper vehicle storage, and exterior disorderliness. The fines have accrued to $3,200. We've sent you 19 notices. You're out of your goddamn mind. I'm not part of your HOA. She gave a patient sigh, like she was explaining bedtime rules to a toddler. Your home is geographically within Oakwood Heights boundaries. All residents are subject to HOA code, regardless of individual preference. This is standard policy. No, it's not. I never signed anything. I bought this house before your damn boundaries even existed. Well, if you'd like your belongings returned, she continued, as if I hadn't spoken, you may pay the owed amount plus a $500 storage fee. Otherwise, they'll be disposed of after 30 days, per Section 9B. You're delusional, I snapped. This is theft. She paused. You're welcome to seek legal counsel. Good day, Mr. Santiago. Then she hung up. I stood there, phone still in my hand, staring into the hollow shell of what used to be my garage. For the first time in a long time, I couldn't even form a coherent thought. They had taken everything, and they thought they could get away with it. The thing about rage, the real kind, the kind that burns cold instead of hot, is that it comes with clarity. I wasn't just angry, I was calibrated, laser-focused. My entire garage was gone, stolen in broad daylight, and the only explanation I had was a smug voicemail of a woman quoting a Section 9B from a fantasy rulebook she thinks applies to me. I called the cops. Dispatcher said they'd send someone over. I waited in the driveway, arms crossed, jaw clenched, staring into the empty space where my livelihood used to be. I felt like a man watching a crime scene after the evidence had been cleaned up, except I was the evidence. I was the damn victim. The cruiser rolled up maybe 20 minutes later. A young guy stepped out. Mid-30s, square jaw, the kind of cop who still tries to be friendly before years of bureaucracy beat the soul out of him. Mr. Santiago? That's me. Officer Lewis, dispatch said you reported a robbery? Yeah, my entire garage. Cleared out by these HOA psychos. Said it was legal. His eyebrows did a dance. HOA? I pointed toward the Oakwood Heights sign at the end of the street. White box truck with their logo. Says Neighborhood Enforcement Unit, which I'm pretty sure isn't a real thing unless they're making Judge Dredd sequels. He chuckled politely. All right, let's walk through this. I gave him the whole rundown. The 15 minutes at Dave's, the empty garage, the call with Karen. I showed him the call log. I showed him the footprints on the floor, the tire marks, the empty screw holes where shelves used to be. He listened, nodded, took notes on his tablet. Then he stepped aside and made a call. He was on the phone for a while. I couldn't hear the full conversation, but I caught the tone. Calm, professional, like he wasn't talking to a criminal, more like a school principal explaining a missing lunchbox. Eventually, he came back over. All right. I spoke with the HOA rep, Mrs. Karen Finch. She confirmed they removed property from your garage in connection with outstanding fines. She sent over documentation. I've reviewed it. My heart started thudding. Well, here's the thing. From what she provided, it appears they've issued numerous notices. They have a standing bylaw allowing asset seizure in lieu of payment, and they claim your property falls within the association's jurisdiction. I stared at him. You're joking. I wish I were. Look, Mr. Santiago, I'm not saying this is right, but based on what I see, this is likely going to be classified as a civil dispute. Civil dispute. They broke into my garage. That's criminal. I hear you. And maybe it is. But when two parties both claim legal authority over property, and one has documentation backing up their actions, even if you dispute it, we're limited. This is something that needs to be resolved in court. I laughed, loudly, bitterly. So, what? I can just print a fake constitution, say someone owes me money, and take their car. He didn't smile this time. If you believe the documents they gave me are fraudulent, you absolutely have grounds for a criminal complaint. But I can't make that determination today. All I can do is file a report and recommend follow-up through civil channels. He handed me a card. His name. The case number. A line at the bottom. Property dispute pending civil clarification. I stared at it. It felt like a participation trophy for getting mugged. They stole over $8,000 worth of equipment, I said quietly. Some of it irreplaceable. I get it, and I do believe something wrong happened here. But we've had a few of these gray area cases lately, HOAS, walking a fine line. Best thing you can do now? Lawyer up. He nodded, offered a weak half smile, and left. I stood alone again, in front of my violated garage. The wind shifted. A plastic cup rolled by. From Dave's porch, probably. It bounced, lifeless, down my driveway. I picked it up, walked inside, and poured myself a shot of bourbon. It was barely noon, but whatever. The bottle made a satisfying thunk on the counter. Then I grabbed my laptop. If the law wasn't going to help me, then I'd make the law see why it had to. I Googled the best property attorneys in the county and started dialing. I'd never hired a lawyer before, never needed to. Most of my problems could be solved with a wrench, a decent socket set, or a long talk with Dave over 2 strong coffee. But this was something else. This was surgical, legal. It smelled like courtrooms and subpoenas and people who used phrases like statutory overreach without choking on their own smug. Enter Thomas Griffin. Office in a squat building near the courthouse. Looked like it hadn't been updated since Reagan was in office. Thomas himself was a wiry man in a faded blue suit with fingers that twitched like they missed their cigarette habit. He greeted me without much ceremony, led me into a room that smelled faintly of printer toner and lemon disinfectant and asked, "So, they took your tools?" "Garage full," I said, dropping the HOA's printed documents on the desk like a dead fish. Claim it was confiscation for unpaid fines, but I'm not part of their damn HOA. He didn't touch the papers, just gave me a look. "Let's start with the obvious," he said. "Do you know without question whether your property is legally within their HOA?" I bought the house in 2017. Oakwood Heights was just a collection of smug stairs across the street back then. Their expansion nonsense came 2 years later. Paperwork? I've got the purchase deed, the plat map, everything from the sale, but I figured you'd want it straight from the source. "Good," he said, standing up. "Let's go see the devil himself." The Maricopa County Assessor's Office. 2 hours later, I was sitting under humming fluorescent lights in a government building that looked like it had given up on life sometime in the late 90s. A clerk named Brian, who looked like he hadn't blinked since lunch, printed out a stack of documents for us. And there it was, in black and white, residential. Acquired June 12, 2017, outside of Oakwood Heights HOA. Not listed on their community plan, not subject to their governance. Thomas tapped the paper like it owed him money. That's one. We asked about the boundary expansion Oakwood Heights claimed they made in 2019. Brian rolled his eyes. "Yeah, that thing. They filed a proposed expansion plan, but it was rejected by the county zoning board. Never certified. No resident votes. Pure fantasy." "Did they send notification to affected property owners?" "Nope. Would have been illegal even if they had." Thomas smiled. It was not a warm smile. They're hanging this whole operation on a fake map. Back in his office, we laid out the full picture. My parcel was never part of Oakwood Heights. Their map was a decorative napkin. Their bylaws held as much legal weight over me as the pirate code in Pirates of the Caribbean. Then he flipped open their enforcement documents. The fines, the notices, the supposed violations. "Jesus," he muttered. "Unauthorized commercial activity? For fixing your own car in your own garage?" "They hate my truck," I said. "They also claim your garage door offends their architectural harmony." "I built that garage, with permits." "Of course you did, but none of this matters." He looked up, "Because even if, and I mean if, you were in their HOA, they still can't do this." He jabbed a finger at the HOA rulebook they'd sent over. "Right here, asset seizure may only occur following adjudication in small claims court and with express approval of the HOA board." "No court, no hearing, no board approval," I said. Just a couple of dudes in a white truck, yanking my welder while I drank coffee across the street. Thomas leaned back. "That's breaking and entering, criminal theft, possibly conspiracy if others helped organize it. And if they sold your tools, we're in felony territory." He started drafting letters, one to the police, one to the HOA's attorney of record, one to the Arizona State Attorney General. He dictated like a man who hated commas and loved consequences. "I'm going to make this their problem," he said. "You don't steal from a mechanic and expect him to just shrug." I left his office with a folder full of legal ammunition and the first sliver of hope I'd felt since that truck rolled away with my livelihood. For the first time in days, I didn't feel like prey. The thing about momentum is, Once you have it, you start to believe in it. That first night after meeting Thomas, I slept like a corpse, dreamless, heavy. For the first time since the theft, I felt like the ground under me had stopped shifting. We had the law on our side. We had the documents. We had the facts. All that was left was to pull the pin and wait for justice to explode in Karen's smug little face. Thomas moved fast. He filed an official criminal complaint with the county sheriff's office, including everything from property records to the fake HOA map to a timeline of events that read like the script for a bad heist movie. He submitted a civil lawsuit against Oakwood Heights and Karen Finch personally, claimed damages, theft, trespassing, and unlawful seizure of private property. He even included photos of my garage before and after, empty pegboards, dust outlines, a roll of tape left behind like a calling card. 3 days later, I had a case number, a court date was pending, things were moving. I even allowed myself to imagine what it would feel like to get my gear back, to walk into that HOA meeting, if they were even dumb enough to show up, and watch Karen's Botox freeze as a judge explained the concept of personal property rights. But then came the envelope. Plain manila, postmarked from the county court. I opened it at the kitchen table while heating up leftover tamales. I wasn't expecting anything yet. It was too soon for a hearing. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Notice of civil case rejection. Jurisdictional grounds. I read it once, then again. The words refused to compute. Claim denied due to property being listed within active HOA jurisdiction. I sat there blinking, the microwave beeping in the background like a deranged metronome. The paper trembled in my hands. I felt heat rising in my chest. Not rage this time. Not even disbelief, just dread. The very idea that the court had taken Karen's word, her map, her fraudulent boundary lines, over the actual county records, it felt like a knife to the gut. All that work, all that evidence, tossed aside because someone at the clerk's office skimmed a map and rubber-stamped it. I called Thomas immediately. He picked up on the second ring. They rejected the case. I said, "What?" Claimed I fall under HOA jurisdiction. Rejected on that basis. That's impossible. I submitted the deed, the parcel history, the rejection letter from zoning. Hell, I even attached the assessor's stamp. Well, they didn't read it. There was a pause. Then Thomas swore, not loudly, but with intent. "Don't panic," he said quickly. "This happens. Sometimes court staff triage cases by cover sheet. They don't always read the exhibits unless it's flagged. I'll go down there myself." And he did. That same afternoon. He called me 3 hours later. "Clerical error," he said. The clerk mistook the HOA's expansion map for the official plat. I showed them the zoning board's rejection and the recorded boundary data. Judge signed off on reinstating the case. "We're back in." I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Jesus Christ, Thomas. I know. I'm going to buy that clerk a coffee and a stern talking to. That night, I didn't sleep. Not because I was worried, but because now I was angry in a new way. I'd seen the edge. The system almost failed me, almost rubber-stamped a lie. If I hadn't had a lawyer, if I hadn't had Thomas, if I'd just been some poor bastard without records, they'd have buried me. And it wasn't over. Not even close. Later that week, I was scrubbing through Dave's security cam footage, just out of curiosity, when I noticed something strange. The HOA truck didn't pull up and seize my stuff in 5 minutes, like some emergency code enforcement claim. They were parked there for almost 47 minutes. 2 men, calm, methodical, loading tools, boxes, even my goddamn rolling stool. No urgency, no warning, just confidence, like they'd done this before. And now, I was sure they had. You ever get that feeling when something clicks into place, but instead of relief, it makes your stomach turn? That was me, watching the footage of those 2 HOA goons emptying my garage with the same casual energy you'd expect from a couple of guys loading up a moving truck. No gloves, no hurry, no fear. That wasn't a first-time job. And if it wasn't their first, I had to wonder, whose garage had they cleaned out before mine? I started digging. First, I posted on a local neighborhood group, one of those semi-abandoned Facebook pages where most of the activity is people arguing about fireworks and raccoons. I kept it simple. Anyone else have run-ins with the Oakwood Heights HOA? Curious about enforcement history, DM me. It got maybe 3 likes and a comment about tree height limits. But 2 days later, I got a message from someone named Glenn Trevor. Said he used to live 1 block over on Clementine Drive inside the supposed expanded HOA zone. Said he and his wife moved out 2 years ago after losing a battle they couldn't win. I replied instantly. He agreed to meet. We sat outside a diner near the highway. Glenn looked tired, not physically, emotionally, like someone who used to care about rules and then got steamrolled by them one too many times. She did it to us too, he said. Karen. The same exact setup. What happened? She started sending us letters. First, it was a warning about the paint on our shutters. Said it was non-compliant with the neutral palette guidelines. Then a fine for our fence height. Then another because our mailbox didn't match the ones down the street. Said we owed $3,000 by the end of the year or we'd face collection. You tried to fight it. At first, I sent certified letters. Asked for the legal basis. Showed her the plat map. We weren't listed under the HOA when we bought the place. She ignored it. Glenn sipped his coffee, jaw tightening. Then one morning, we came home from visiting my wife's parents. Gone less than 24 hours, and the back patio furniture was gone. The grill, too. Brand new Weber. They left a flyer taped to our door, confiscated for non-compliance, pending resolution. I sat back, stunned. You called the cops? Of course I did. They said it was a civil issue. Same as you. He pulled out a folder from under the table. Inside were copies of letters, all from Oakwood Heights HOA. Fines for ridiculous things. Improper garden edging, garage door left open too long, visible play equipment. They knew what they were doing, he said. It wasn't about rules. It was about breaking you down. He looked me dead in the eye. We couldn't afford a lawyer. I had a medical bill from back surgery. I couldn't take the risk. We paid the damn fees just to get them off our backs. Then we sold the house and left. Did you ever get your stuff back? He smiled. But it was hollow. They said it was disposed of after 30 days. Gone. Probably sold. I sat there, cold all over. Glenn wasn't just some paranoid guy ranting about HOAs. He had the papers, the timeline, the scars. I thanked him and took copies of everything. I promised him, if this went to court, I'd make sure his story was heard. As I drove home, my thoughts started racing. Karen hadn't just crossed a line. She built a business model on crossing it. Invented violations, used fear and bureaucracy to bleed people dry. And when that didn't work, she stole. And worst of all, it had worked. No one pushed back. Until now. Back home, I told Thomas everything. He studied Glenn's documents, nodding grimly. This proves a pattern, he said. Same fake authority, same enforcement tactics, same outcomes. If we find just one more case like this, it's no longer civil abuse. It's organized fraud. That same night, I printed out flyers. Old school. Taped them to lampposts near Oakwood Heights. Title, Has your property been taken by HOA enforcement? You're not alone. I included an email, a burner number, and a simple message. I'm going after them. If you've been through it too, I'll listen. Most people probably rolled their eyes. But the next morning, I had 4 voicemails. One was from a woman who said her mother's garden gnomes had been taken because they weren't within aesthetic compliance. Another man claimed the HOA had entered his backyard while he was out of town and removed non-standard fencing. All stories. Different in the details, but the MO was the same. Power through fear, enforcement through intimidation, penalties without process. But one voicemail stood out. It was from a former HOA volunteer. Hey, I saw your flyer. I used to work with Karen, just part-time admin stuff. But there's things you should know, things she made us do. Call me back. My thumb hovered over the call button for a second. I was starting to feel like I was in a noir flick, only without the cool coat and jazz soundtrack. I called her back. She answered fast. Nervous. Said her name was Trish. She'd worked the HOA desk for a year and a half before quitting 6 months ago. Said Karen treated the HOA like a personal kingdom. She kept a list, Trish said, of non-compliant properties. Not members, just people she thought were making the neighborhood look bad. If someone didn't respond to letters, she'd escalate. Sometimes she'd send guys to take stuff. No police, no court, just pick up and haul. You mean she targeted people not even in the HOA? She called it preemptive community alignment. Said the bylaws allowed it. They didn't. I know that now, she said, voice shaking. Back then, I just filed the letters. I didn't know what she was really doing, But I remember one thing for sure. She was bragging when the Trevors moved out. Said another eyesore eliminated. My grip on the phone tightened. She ever mentioned selling the stuff they took? She said they reallocated resources. I didn't ask questions. I should have. I'm sorry. You willing to make a statement? For court? A pause. Then, yes. I want to make it right. We scheduled a meeting. Thomas nearly did a backflip when I told him. A former insider, that was dynamite. You realize what you've done? He said, you've turned this from a petty power struggle into a full-blown HOA corruption case. I'm not done, I said. I want to know where my tools went, and something told me I was close. Very close. There's something terrifyingly intimate about seeing your stolen property sitting on a shelf, priced for strangers. The shop was called Bill's Tools and More, tucked into a dusty strip mall just off Highway 60, wedged between a vape shop and a laundromat that looked like it hadn't worked since Clinton was in office. I pulled into the lot around 10 in the morning, trying to look casual, just a guy looking for a socket set. Nothing suspicious, but my heart was pounding. Trish had given me the tip, said Karen's husband, Bill, ran the place. Said she'd overheard him mention new inventory coming in after enforcement days. Thomas almost threw his pen across the room when he heard that. Let me guess. No receipts, no chain of custody, no nothing. Garage sales don't leave paperwork, I said. So there I was, walking through a cluttered, dusty hardware graveyard, pretending to browse. The place smelled like WD-40, old coffee and despair. Rusted shelving units lined the walls, stacked with tools, compressors, beat-up drills, and tangled cords. Some of the stuff looked like it had been dragged out of a flood. Other pieces were pristine, too pristine. And then I saw it. Third shelf from the left. A hard, black snap-on case. My snap-on case. I didn't need to open it. I knew the scratches, the slight dent in the upper right corner. But I opened it anyway. There they were, my precision Torca wrenches, my metric socket set, my ratchets, everything arranged exactly as I'd left it, and right there on the inside lip of the lid, scratched faintly, but unmistakably, MS. I froze. A wave of emotion hit me so hard I had to grip the edge of the shelf. Relief, rage, disbelief, like seeing a kidnapped pet in a cage at a shelter. You're happy it's alive. But Jesus... what did they do to it? I took out my phone and started recording. Quietly, methodically, every angle, every shot. The case, my initials. The shop. The man behind the counter, tall, wide, red-faced. Bill, I assumed. Karen's partner in theft. I walked over. Hey, I said, keeping my voice calm. That snap-on set. Where'd you get it? He didn't even blink. Liquidation. Guy brought in a bunch of tools last month. Got a name. Don't ask. Cash deals. We don't keep logs for one-off stuff. I nodded. My teeth were practically grinding. Well, I'm pretty sure that set's mine. Got the initials right here. He looked at me with the confidence of a man who's convinced the world's never going to catch up. That don't mean anything, he said. People engrave tools all the time. Doesn't prove it's yours. Oh, I'm not trying to convince you, I said, holding up my phone. I'm just gathering evidence. His face twitched. Just a flicker. Then he looked back down at his newspaper. I walked out, got into my truck, and called the cops. This time it was different. I had footage, I had records, I had multiple witnesses now. Thomas had already pushed the criminal case through with the sheriff's department, and once I told them we had found the stolen goods, they didn't hesitate. They showed up 2 hours later with a search warrant. I wasn't allowed to join the raid, but I parked across the lot and watched from my truck. 4 patrol cars, 2 detectives. Bill was still in his red flannel shirt, arms crossed, pissed off but not resisting as they led him outside and cuffed him. When the cops came out with boxes, full of tools, labeled parts bins, even my welding helmet, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks, satisfaction. But it didn't stop there. Inside the store, they found not just my property, but items belonging to at least 5 other individuals. One guy had engraved his name inside a welding mask. Another had serial numbers for his equipment from insurance claims. All of it matched. Thomas and I met with the lead detective that evening. This is organized fencing, he said. Not just possession of stolen property, trafficking. That carries weight. What about Karen? I asked. She directed the takings, Thomas added. We've got 3 statements, fake enforcement notices, even HOA bylaws showing she had no authority over Marco's property. It's more than enough for conspiracy. The detective nodded slowly. "We're going to need to talk to her." I couldn't help smiling, just a little. That night, I opened a beer in the garage. It was still mostly empty, cold concrete and echo, but I had my torque wrenches back, my welder, my grinder, the symbols of my work, my life, my autonomy. I sat on an overturned bucket and scrolled through the photos of everything they recovered, and then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I picked up. "Mr. Santiago." It was a calm, clipped male voice. "This is Officer Hines with the Gilbert PD. Just letting you know, we'll be serving a warrant on Karen Finch this evening." I almost laughed. "Want me to film it?" I asked. There was a beat of silence. Then the officer said, "No need. Her neighbors are already outside." I wish I could say I wasn't grinning when I pulled up to Oakwood Heights that evening, but I've never been a good liar. Karen's house was a colonial-style two-story with pale gray siding and a blood-red door, fitting, honestly. The whole street was lined with copy-paste lawns, fake shutters, and people who always looked like they were silently judging your bumper stickers. But tonight, they weren't judging me. They were staring at her. 2 patrol cars sat parked on her pristine, stamped concrete driveway, lights flashing silently, painting her hydrangeas in alternating blue and red. A small crowd had gathered on the sidewalks, residents, phones out, filming like it was the finale of a reality show. I recognized a few faces, people who used to shoot me glares for parking my truck facing the wrong way. Now they were watching the Queen get dethroned. The door opened. 2 officers stepped out with Karen between them, hands cuffed behind her back. She looked stunned, like someone had pulled the rug out from under her mid-lecture, still in her evening sweater set and pearls. Her perfect HOA president posture had cracked, shoulders slumped, jaw tight, no smugness left. As they guided her down the front steps, I caught her eye from across the street. She froze. For just a second, the mask dropped. Not anger, not guilt, fear. Then she looked away. They put her in the back of the car. The doors shut with a final satisfying clunk. The cruisers rolled out. I didn't cheer. I didn't raise a fist. I just stood there, arms crossed, letting the silence do what years of warnings and letters never could. Karen Finch was under arrest for felony conspiracy to commit theft, trafficking in stolen goods, unlawful entry, and fraudulent misrepresentation of authority. But more than that, her power was gone. Whatever grip she had over this community, it cracked the moment those cuffs clicked. The next day, it was everywhere. Local news stations ran the footage neighbors had shot. HOA president arrested in stolen property scandal. Social media lit up. Memes. Hashtags. Someone photoshopped her face on the Monopoly man behind bars. But it wasn't just spectacle. It was exposure. With Karen booked, investigators began tearing through HOA records. And that's when the real rot surfaced. Over 5 years, Oakwood Heights HOA had issued more than $89,000 in fines, half of which were completely fabricated. No violations, no documentation, just invented infractions sent to people who didn't know their rights. Of those, more than $67,000 worth of property had been confiscated. Mostly tools, appliances, patio furniture, lawnmowers, anything of value. Almost none of it had been documented. Most of it sold at Bill's Tools and More. Thomas got a call from the prosecutor's office 2 days later. They'd traced multiple transactions directly back to Bill's business account. Karen had written up the fake fines. Bill had fenced the goods. And a third player, Doug Martin, head of neighborhood enforcement, a glorified rent-a-cop with no real authority, had been paid cash bonuses for compliance recoveries. They brought Doug in for questioning. He cracked in 20 minutes, sang like a canary in front of a cat. He claimed Karen kept a spreadsheet labeled problem properties. Anyone who ignored fines got moved up the list. Special enforcement meant drive-by seizures timed when residents were at work, out of town, or just not looking. I wasn't the first. Glenn Trevor hadn't been the first. We were just the first to fight back. When news of the spreadsheet hit, more residents came forward, some furious, some ashamed they hadn't spoken sooner. Trish, the ex-admin, provided printouts she'd secretly copied before quitting. HOA board members began resigning en masse to save face. By the end of the week, Oakwood Heights didn't have a president, a board, or a functioning enforcement office. Just a growing list of civil suits and a town full of pissed-off neighbors wondering how they'd let it go on so long. I got a call from Glenn that Friday. "You did it," he said. "You cracked it open." I didn't do it alone. Still, I wish I'd fought like you. Better late than never. And it was. For all of us. Court moves slow. Slower than a mechanic with a hangover, but it moves. Karen's trial started 4 months after her arrest. The courtroom was packed. Reporters, former HOA members, neighbors who used to pretend they didn't know me, now nodding politely like we'd always been on good terms. Karen sat at the defense table in a navy blue suit, thinner than I remembered, her hair grayer. Bill was there too, looking like a guy who knew prison food didn't come with hot sauce. Doug took a plea deal and testified against them both. A smart move for someone whose job title was made up by a woman who thought bylaws beat state law. The prosecution laid it out plain: $67,000 in stolen goods. A fraudulent expansion map submitted to authorities and used as legal cover. HOA funds redirected to personal accounts, not maintenance, not community improvements. Threats, coercion, fabricated infractions. One line stuck with me. The prosecutor held up Karen's fake map and said, "This wasn't about community standards, this was about control." My testimony came on day 3. I told them everything. The theft, the police call, the court rejection and reversal, the store where I found my gear. I handed over Glenn's documents. Trish testified after me, visibly shaking, but her voice didn't waver. And when she described how Karen called the Trevor's departure a visual upgrade, there was an audible gasp in the room. By day 6, the jury had their verdict: guilty on all counts. Karen Finch, 4 years prison plus restitution. Bill, 2 years for trafficking and court-ordered asset forfeiture. His shop was seized and shut down. Doug got probation and a lifetime ban from any HOA employment, which might be the harshest part for a guy who wore a security windbreaker like it made him invincible. The court awarded me full restitution, $8,000 for stolen tools, $25,000 for damages and lost income, plus full legal fees. Glenn and 4 other families won their civil suits too, collectively over $118,000 in damages, all of it pulled from Oakwood Heights Reserve Fund. That reserve, gone. The new interim board had no choice but to disclose the disaster to the rest of the residents. Special assessments were rejected. Half the community voted to dissolve the HOA entirely. The other half resigned from it. Me, I got my tools back. The good ones anyway. Some were sold off too fast, but insurance covered the rest. And I bought myself a new Miller welder with the compensation money. Best damn machine I've ever owned. One afternoon, I was in the garage, tools humming, everything where it should be, when Dave walked over with 2 beers. "You know," he said, "you should come over for coffee more often." I laughed. "No thanks. Next time I leave my garage for 15 minutes, I want it to be because I'm rich, not robbed." He smirked, glanced at the camera mounted above my garage door. "You always this paranoid now." "Not paranoid," I said, cracking the beer. "Prepared, and this time they can try."